The illusion of intimacy when you're never truly alone with them. They're with you. You're lying in bed, legs tangled, their breath steady and slow beside yours. They're holding your hand, touching your back, calling you theirs. But somewhere deep down, you feel it, that ghost in the room, that feeling that you're not the only one who lives in their mind, that even as they touch you, they're miles away. Some part of them is always somewhere else, and you don't know how to name it, but you feel it. That quiet sense that while you're building a future, they're still leaving all the exits open. Avoidantly attached people can love you, but from a distance that keeps them safe. Even when they're physically present, emotionally they're still layered in protection. Protection that looks like low drama. Protection that sounds like, I just like my space. Protection that feels like disconnection. You'll notice it in the smallest moments. The way they glance at their phone when you open up. The way they shut down when you say, I need more from you. The way you feel like you're chasing someone who says they're not running. This isn't random. It's patterned. Avoidants are not cold by nature. They are wired to survive connection in a way that feels safe to them, but lonely for you. And one of the most confusing things they do is keep others nearby, just in case. They never say it outright. You won't hear, you're not the only one I talk to. But you'll feel the shift when someone new enters their orbit. The way they become just a little more distracted. The way your importance starts to dilute. Not all at once, but gradually. The way they stop initiating and start monitoring you instead. You start to feel like a placeholder in your own relationship. Like something about the intimacy became too much. And now they're diluting it. Not by ending things outright, but by spreading their emotional attention. Thin enough that they never have to truly feel the weight of your closeness. And that's what this first chapter is about. The illusion of intimacy. You're not crazy for feeling emotionally alone with someone who still physically shows up. You're not paranoid for noticing the invisible divide that grows when they start to pull away. Because for many avoidants, connection means suffocation. And instead of asking for air, they create distance. Quietly, subtly, disguised as I'm just tired, or I've been busy, or nothing's wrong. But something is wrong, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to pull back the curtain on a survival strategy many people never see until they're already deeply hurt by it. Placeholders and proxies. Why the avoidant keeps a roster. They rarely admit it, even to themselves. But many avoidants keep a quiet rotation of emotional placeholders. Not because they're heartless, not because they don't care about the one person who shows up for them with depth, but because the moment something starts to feel real, they start preparing their escape. Not always a physical escape, not even a breakup, but an emotional withdrawal, masked by a carefully cultivated roster of what-ifs and just-in-cases. Some are friends they used to love. Some are new people they barely know. Some are exes who still orbit their world, never quite gone, never fully confronted. And some are just faces in the background, flirtations, distractions, vague options they never intend to pursue, but keep nearby to soften the weight of intimacy. This is the avoidance insurance policy, not just against rejection, but against exposure, against the unbearable closeness of being known. Because if you're their only source of connection, if they really let themselves need you, then what happens when it hurts? What happens when they feel criticized? When they get overwhelmed by your needs, your love, your desire to be emotionally chosen? It terrifies them. So they scatter their emotional focus. They dilute their vulnerability. And they tell themselves, I won't fall too deep. I have other places to go. It's not about promiscuity. It's not about sex. It's about protection. Even when it looks like betrayal, What drives it is fear. You see, love to an avoidant feels like exposure. Not the warm kind, the raw, unprotected kind. The kind that says, "You see me, and now I can be abandoned." So, to offset that vulnerability, they begin to create a subconscious exit map, a connection from work they've kept emotionally charged, an ex they still text now and then under the guise of checking in, a friend they joke with more flirtatiously than you're comfortable with, a dating app they haven't fully deleted just out of boredom. Each one is a placeholder, a proxy for safety, a quiet whisper to their nervous system that says, "You're not trapped. You still have options. You won't be consumed." The tragedy? They don't even see the pain they cause. Because in their world, emotional diffusion is a survival instinct. They're not cheating. They're breathing. To be fully with one person feels like drowning to them. Not because that person is too much, but because they never learned how to stay in intimacy without losing control of their inner world. So when you say, "I feel like you're pulling away," they say, "No, I'm not. Everything's fine." But their eyes are distant. Their phone is locked more often. Their laughs are shorter. And the warmth between you starts to cool. Not with cruelty, but with quiet detachment. They don't rage. They don't lash out. They just step back. One foot out, then one hand, then one heart. Still there. Still technically with you. But more and more of them is scattered among proxies. Emotional affairs that don't look like cheating, but feel like abandonment. And that's what hurts the most. Because while you're wondering what you did wrong, they're unconsciously trying to stop needing you so much. They don't want to be unfaithful. They want to feel safe. But they never learned that safety doesn't come from having backups. It comes from staying. And staying, really staying, is the one thing they were never taught how to do. Emotional affairs of the avoidant mind. It's easy to miss it when you're in it. You don't notice the slow unraveling at first. The way their laughter changes pitch around someone else. The way their eyes light up when they get that one message. The way their mood lifts when you're not the one who shifted it. And when you bring it up, they say, "Don't be insecure. There's nothing going on. You're overthinking." But something is going on. Not in their body, but in their mind. And emotional affairs, for the avoidant, are rarely about the other person. They're about escape. Because closeness, the real kind, the vulnerable kind, makes them feel like they're about to be swallowed whole. And instead of saying, "I'm scared," they say nothing. They just drift. They drift into daydreams of other lives. They build tiny fantasies in the corners of their mind. Maybe that person at work would understand me better. Maybe my ex and I weren't so bad after all. Maybe if I was with someone who didn't need so much, I could finally breathe. It's not that they've stopped loving you. It's that love, for them, is suffocating when it gets too close. So they look for places to exhale. Even if that means breathing in someone else's presence for a while. They're not seeking sex. They're seeking space. And emotional affairs give them just enough. Emotional stimulation to stay distant from the one place they feel most vulnerable. With you. You feel it when they text someone else more excitedly than they text you. You feel it when they suddenly become more private, more distant, less invested. And you know, deep in your gut, that something has shifted. They're still with you, but not fully. Some part of their heart has wandered off. And still, they say they haven't done anything wrong. Because in their mind, they haven't. They haven't kissed anyone. They haven't crossed a physical line. They haven't said, "I love you" to someone else. But their heart is no longer where it used to be. It's scattered across half-charged conversations, unresolved exes, and the vague idea that maybe something better exists somewhere else. And the most painful part? You can't compete with a fantasy. You can't ground them back into reality when they've already convinced themselves that needing someone makes them weak. That closeness equals danger. That love will inevitably end in abandonment. So they pre-abandon you, quietly, internally, through emotional investments that require just enough from them to feel alive, but not enough to make them feel trapped. They keep others in their emotional periphery, so they don't have to feel fully tethered to you. Because if they were, they might have to face themselves. They might have to reckon with the deep fear that they are unlovable if they stay too long, that they'll be found out, that they'll mess it up, that they'll lose themselves completely. So they sabotage, in slow, almost invisible ways, not to hurt you, but to save themselves from a kind of love they don't know how to receive. The emotional affairs of an avoidant aren't marked by grand passion or explosive drama. They're quiet, dull even, mostly lived in the mind, but they are enough to fracture trust, enough to make you feel like a ghost in your own relationship, because they may not have left the room, but their emotional intimacy has, and it rarely returns until something forces them to realize what they've truly lost. When the roster fails and you're finally missed, there comes a moment, always, when even the most carefully curated roster fails them. Not because you forced it, not because you chased them, but because nothing out there fills the void they thought they could outrun. For a while, the rotation worked. Each person, every placeholder, served a purpose. Someone made them feel admired. Someone let them feel in control. Someone didn't ask too many questions. And someone kept them feeling attractive, desirable, unattached. But none of them saw them the way you did. They noticed it the first time they sat across from someone new and didn't feel known. They noticed it when the laughs felt shallower, the silences more awkward. They noticed it when they tried to replicate the rhythm of your presence and realized it wasn't there, because you weren't just a source of comfort. You were a mirror. You were where they confronted the parts of themselves no one else saw. And while that scared them into running, it also centered them in a way they now crave. The avoidance fantasy is that they'll never need anyone, that if love ever hurts, they'll just find a backup, another, and another, until they forget. But eventually, the replacements blur together. The thrill wears off, and they're left with the echo of something real, something lost, something irreplaceable. You, the one who saw through the detachment, the one who didn't leave when they flinched, the one who offered your full heart, even when they offered only fragments. At first, they told themselves they were doing the right thing by keeping emotional doors cracked open elsewhere. They told themselves they were protecting their peace, preserving their freedom, pacing the relationship. But now, they're quiet, alone, scroll-stuck in conversations that feel like static. And in that stillness, they realize the roster wasn't a safety net. It was a distraction from the one person who actually mattered. Not because you chased, not because you proved yourself, but because you left the door open and walked away. And here's what they don't tell you about avoidance. They don't miss you when you're begging. They miss you when you disappear, when the warmth they took for granted is gone, when they wake up and don't feel your emotional presence anymore, when they try to return to the familiar and realize the familiar was never in the crowd of options. It was in you. That's when panic hits. Not always dramatically, but subtly. Anxiety where there used to be calm. Restlessness in moments they used to enjoy. Sleeplessness they can't explain. Because the placeholder people, they don't demand intimacy. They don't challenge the avoidant to grow. They don't threaten the illusion of control. But they also don't touch the avoidance core. They don't provoke the guilt. They don't trigger the self-reflection. They don't hold the memory of someone who loved them even when they were hard to love. You do. You always did. And now that you're gone, that echo becomes unbearable. They revisit old messages. They reread conversations they ignored. They check your online status and invent reasons not to reach out until they can't help themselves. It's not about the others anymore. It's not about scarcity or loneliness. It's about reckoning with the fact that they let the only person who truly saw them slip through their fingers. And what do when that realization lands? They panic, not overtly, not in some grand, romantic gesture, but in their silent, confused way. They try to test your door. They send vague messages. They hint. They watch. They hope. Because suddenly, the roster is quiet. The rotation feels meaningless. And the only thing louder than the silence is your absence, the one they can't replace. They'll come back differently this time. Not with confidence, not with clarity, but with hesitation. The kind that only shows up when someone finally sees what they were too defended to admit. You were never the problem. You were the anchor. When they return, it won't sound like an apology. It might sound like, "Hey stranger," or "I was just thinking about you today," or worse, silence. But a sudden flood of likes on your old posts, a new follower request, a song that seems just a little too intentional in their story. They can't say the words, because to say the words would mean acknowledging what they did, not just to you, but to themselves. They didn't just lose you. They ran from themselves in the process. And now they're looking back, trying to piece together a version of you that still exists, even though the version of you they knew is gone. Because you don't wait in the same way anymore. You don't feel the same ache. You're not refreshing their page, rereading the past, hoping for closure. You already gave yourself closure the day you stopped trying to explain your worth to someone who was committed to misunderstanding it. But here's the truth. You were never the only one. Not emotionally, not logistically. They had people lined up. Maybe not in a dramatic way, but in the quiet, strategic way avoidants keep just enough distance from any one connection, so they don't have to feel the weight of needing anyone fully. But despite that, you were the only one who mattered. And they know that now. Not because they're better, not because they've changed overnight, but because they finally ran out of distractions, out of backup plans, out of illusions. And all they have left is the memory of who they were when you loved them, and the growing awareness that no one since has been able to reflect that version of them back. You made them feel like they were enough, not for what they gave, but for who they were underneath all the armor. And losing that, it haunts them. They thought they could manage the loss. They thought emotional backup plans would keep them safe. But now they realize all they did was trade something real for something convenient. And convenience never heals the kind of ache that stays after love has gone quiet. So they come back, softly, cautiously, testing the waters. But this time, the silence works against them. Because you've learned to speak fluent peace. You've made stillness your sanctuary. You've stopped being a revolving door for people who only recognize your value in your absence. You might respond. You might not. That's your right. Because healing didn't make you bitter. It just made you clear. And clarity is what they never expected. They counted on your empathy, your forgiveness, your hope. What they never planned for was your boundaries. So if they return and you do decide to answer, do it for you, not for them, not to rescue them, not to make them whole, but to meet them from the solid ground you built while they were trying to replace you with fragments. Because when someone finally realizes you were irreplaceable, their return isn't power. It's proof that they couldn't find what you gave. Not in the crowd, not in the silence, not in the mirror. And if this story made you feel seen, if you've ever loved someone who kept running, only to circle back after breaking your heart. Know this: you weren't too much. You were the first real thing they couldn't numb away. And the more they tried, the more they discovered. You were never the only one in their life, but you were the only one that ever mattered. If this resonated with you, share this video with someone who's been silently carrying the weight of loving and avoidant. And if you've lived this pattern, if you've felt invisible, replaced, or emotionally orphaned, drop a comment below. You're not alone. Let this space be where healing begins. Subscribe for more psychologically rich deep dives on attachment, relationships, and emotional patterns that shape our love lives. You deserve to stop running after people who only notice your absence. It's time to come home to you.